So this weekend, the Oklahoma Sooners made a move that surprised college football fans across the nation and both simultaneously excited and had OU fans asking questions. As Brent Venables and the Oklahoma Sooners move on from offensive coordinator Seth Littrell, which excited Oklahoma fans, but announced that they were retaining John Finley and he would be calling the plays, which left Oklahoma fans scratching their heads. Today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about why, in my opinion, this makes sense in the grand scheme of things, where Oklahoma goes from here, and everything in between. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no. Are you surprised that Oklahoma moved on from Seth Littrell? And let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And as I alluded to in the intro, this was a move that surprised college football fans, and I think even surprised some Oklahoma fans. Now, even though the vast majority of Oklahoma fans that I have seen, that I have interacted with, have all been of the same mindset that they wanted a change at the offensive coordinator position, doing so mid-year is a little bit shocking. Now, that's not to say it's unheard of. We've seen this in college football, but it's just not all that common, and especially for a major brand like the Oklahoma Sooners, but that's exactly what Brent Venables chose to do, and it's real hard to argue with him here. Let's be as fair as possible, because I think whenever we're talking about Oklahoma's situation, it's not as easy as it may seem. It's a deeply nuanced conversation. Oklahoma is one of the most injured teams in all of college football. It's actually insane how many injuries they've sustained. And it's not just relegated to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, you've got guys that were contributors that were playing real good football on the defensive side that are done because of injuries. But on the offensive side of the ball, your offensive line is playing musical chairs due to injuries. Your top 5 wide receivers are banged up. And on top of that, you've been ping-ponging between 2 quarterbacks. That makes it really difficult for an offensive coordinator to figure out what he has and put something together. But as much as that is true, and it is, the one thing we can see from Oklahoma's offense is a total lack of creativity and just utter stagnation. It doesn't look like there's any semblance of a plan when Oklahoma's offense takes the field. They have absolutely no identity. And it's one thing to be figuring out your identity. It's another thing to almost just say, it is what it is. Because even though you have injuries, the games still have to be played. Even though you have injuries, it is your job as the offensive coordinator to scheme something up to make it as easy as possible, especially if you have a true freshman quarterback in there. But even if it's Jackson Arnold, this is his first year as a starter in a brand new conference. It is your job as the offensive coordinator to make their jobs easier and not harder. And what we saw on Saturday against South Carolina, in my opinion, could be labeled as malpractice. It was that bad. Because let's be very honest here. South Carolina isn't a perfect team, but the defensive front they have is really good. Specifically, the edge rush duo they have is insane. As good as any edge rush duo in the nation. Seth Littrell, with his true freshman quarterback back there, chose to allow a tight end that isn't exactly a great blocker try and handle one of the best pass rushers in the game, one-on-one. And wouldn't you know, it didn't work. It's not like you didn't have film of other teams attempting this with tight ends who are far better blockers and it not working there. It's not like you didn't have film of these edges, of these pass rushers smoking quality offensive linemen. You did. But you still chose to place a tight end that's not a great blocker and have him handle one of the better players in the SEC. And wouldn't you know it, it didn't work. And sure, your quarterback escaped the pocket. He didn't get sacked, but you then made his job far more difficult than it needed to be. And to me, that's been the story of Oklahoma's offense this entire year. It has looked like the job has been far more difficult than it needs to be. There's no creativity out there. None. And as much as I always hate to see people lose their jobs, because that's not why I got into this. I got into this to talk about the positive aspects and why college football in particular is such a great game. I have told stories before that going back to a UNT game, I walked out at halftime because it was some of the worst, most undisciplined football I'd ever seen. Now, UNT would win games, but boy, was it not pretty. It was straight up ugly. Just undisciplined football. So with that, Seth Littrell is no longer the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma, and instead, John Finley has been retained. Now, as excited as Oklahoma fans were about the possibility of a new offensive coordinator, they were simultaneously perplexed that John Finley remained. John Finley being the tight ends coach, and that's a position that just hasn't been producing for Oklahoma over the past few years. He was co-offensive coordinator with Seth Littrell. Why retain him? Well, in my opinion, the only reason you retain him is so that you have some guy who understood the play calling within the offense, even if it wasn't working, and you don't have to completely start from scratch mid-year. Do I expect John Finley to be the long-term solution for Oklahoma? Unless he absolutely lights it up over the next few weeks, no, I don't. This to me is like a bookmark. Respectfully, of course. This to me is like Oklahoma and Brent Venables putting a bookmark in this season and saying, okay, we have to make a move. We can't necessarily start from scratch because it's not like too many offensive coordinators are going to leave and be available right now. Right? How many offensive coordinators are currently available to come in and do this? And furthermore, that wouldn't work because he does not know his personnel. So you have to retain somebody that understands the personnel to call plays. As much as Oklahoma fans have been puzzled by this, that's the reality of the situation. You have to retain somebody that has some semblance of an understanding of your roster. But I do not expect, unless John Finley goes out there and this offense does a complete 180, they start lighting it up, they look like they have a spark, I do not expect him to be the long-term solution at offensive coordinator. I just understand why he wasn't let go as well. Because you're not going to hire an offensive coordinator mid-year. There aren't that many offensive coordinators that get let go on a mid-year basis. And you don't see moves just happening like that because that new guy doesn't know his personnel. Doesn't know how to work to the strengths of the team. So you retain somebody. Well, in this case, it was John Finley. So what should Oklahoma do moving forward? Well, I said this before they hired Seth Littrell, that the guy I thought they should have went and got was Brennan Marion. I've been saying this for Oklahoma for a year now. And I think if you're Brent Venables, you really wish you would have gotten him. Especially when you watch UNLV, their starting quarterback leaves the team and they're still humming. They have a running back who is a contributor leave the team and they're still humming. Playing good football. I think if you were being honest, if Brent Venables hit the podium and had some truth serum, he'd probably say, yeah, I wish I would have hired that guy. Because I was never inspired by the Seth Littrell hire. That's probably because, being a UNT alum, I saw it firsthand. And yes, he would win games. But it wasn't pretty. And it got even less pretty when Graham Harrell left. So for Oklahoma, I'm fascinated to see this offensive coordinator search this offseason because the one negative I have seen about Brennan Marion out there that I don't disagree with is that guy's trajectory right now is so high. The thing you worry about is hiring him and only keeping him for a year. Because that guy's a star in the college football world in the making. And so if you hire him and he does exactly what I think he would do, he might be getting head coaching looks. So I gotta hear from you. Who would you like to see Oklahoma pursue at offensive coordinator this offseason? Were you surprised that they fired Seth Littrell? Were you surprised that they retained John Finley? Can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. That's it. See ya.